Well, good afternoon, Kelly Darwin. This is another exciting episode of West Shore Business, and we're in the middle of like a friggin' heat wave.
It's beautiful.
Hey,
It's
and as I
beautiful
look at our two images, you look great. I look like this kind of red thing.
You know what? I have a dead plant beside me, and it makes me seem more lively.
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh! Hey,
This
yeah,
plant I bought at the beginning of COVID when we started Zooming, right? And I wanted to have something in the background other than a slightly beige wall. So I
yeah.
got this great art piece that we had, so I hung that up, and I went to Home Depot and picked up this sad plant. It was good
Hey,
when I picked it up, but it's been a year and it
well, it
doesn't
might
like
be
this room.
sleeping. Maybe it's sleeping.
Maybe. It's
Hey,
waiting
listen,
till the restrictions are lifted and then
right,
put it
right.
away.
It can go join its other a family of plants. Hey, we started this, oh God, 18 months ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And we're kind of the only folks on the block talking about the West Shore. And there's been an explosion of
Even just in the
podcasts
West Shore, there's like
and media on the
three,
West Shore.
yeah, there's like three West Shore podcasts now.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's tons of podcasts, of course, but I think we've seen a big pickup in media doing podcasts in different organizations, and
Yeah.
they're definitely coming out to the West Shore. And I've listened to parts of some of them. Some of them are like, one was an hour and a half long or something, and I just don't have that span. So we try to keep ours under 30. And
That's right.
but
Well,
you know what? What's interesting, because I was thinking about this yesterday when thinking about today's guest and everything, and who's going to be joining us in about 10 minutes. And we started this to celebrate interesting small business stories in the West Shore. So not particularly development or big business or logging or mining or anything like that. It was really more about,
stories.
There's so many cool little 1-person, 2-person, or under 10-person businesses in the West Shore that don't get talked about because everything that comes out of the mainstream news is obviously COVID related right now, or it's bad, or it's political, or it's something like that. And this was meant to be a celebration of all these hardworking, amazing entrepreneurs we have.
Yeah.
And then of course COVID came along, and through a series of fortunate events, I'll say, sidetracked us into politics, and actually sidetracked me more into politics probably than you.
Well, I helped you. I was encouraging you.
You helped push me. But we became that mainstay for the local mayors to get information out.
Yeah.
And some MLAs and some MPs too. We had Randall Garrison on here and Adam Olson. Was there another MP we had?
I think
there wasn't.
We had all the mayors.
All the mayors. Mitzi Dean, the MLA.
Right.
Ellis Ross, MLA.
Yeah. We tried to get Kelly Darwin MLA, but that's for another day.
Yeah. We'll see. And then so we took a political turn, and then we brought it back to business. We met with Paul. Was it last week, from Serious Coffee up at Millstream Village, talking about all the cool stuff going on there, and
and
was just into the restrictions, so talking about his patio and
and then we had a neat conversation with and she's going to watch, and she's going to just really be mad at me, but Kelly with the warehouse with a new warehouse facility, and really it's just all about how all of this, isn't it? Just all of this is about how the West Shore is exploding, and now we know. It's sort of funny, right? When media starts paying attention to you've grown up. You're there, right?
Yeah.
I really hope we keep on with the stories. I love the fact that we're going to be interviewing Liberal Party candidates for the leadership. I think that's important, and particularly for this show, because the premier is the MLA of this region. So
so that last election, I think he did.
So there's a direct relationship here. We're not being political as much as it's relevant. It's relevant to the dynamic that's going on here. Hey, how's your business coming along?
Crazy. We're busy.
Hey, that's great news.
We're definitely fortunate that there's a number of industries that have not only been able to stay operational during the pandemic, but have become in demand. And as a digital company, we definitely became more in demand. And
well, I don't have the size or breadth or scope of your company, but I do digital work.
Yeah,
I've done it for a hobby for many years. That being creating videos, blogging, telling stories really is fundamentally what I love doing. I love doing with you. And the odd person wants to pay me for that now. And folks don't want to have slick productions.
Yeah.
And and
not
I think
a major motion picture.
Right? Not like a lot of moving parts. Just people talking. What is the what's your take on how storytelling is being done digitally? And is there a movement towards sort of a more
unscripted, polished approach? Yeah, you know what? I think we're in a time. If you remember back, YouTube used to be really good, and if you wanted to see, Bob Dylan singing "Blowing in the Wind," you type it in, and it'd come up with 50 Bob Dylan videos. Yeah. And then somewhere down the road, it got ruined. And now you type in Bob Dylan and you get, well, here's my dog Bob Dylan playing fetch, and here's somebody doing a cover, and here's a picture I painted of him, and you don't actually get any Dylan content anymore. And I'm feeling like we're getting dangerously close to that with the podcast, because it's become very accessible, with everybody being comfortable at home, using Zoom, using recording devices or whatever to communicate. So it's quite literally becoming everybody and their dog has a podcast. And it's difficult to filter out the quality ones. I mean, obviously guests help and who those guests are. Yeah. And we've been very lucky to have some amazing guests in our 18 months.
Yes, haven't we? Yes. I don't think I could do a heavily produced, managed production. Mm-hmm. I'd break out somewhere in there. My head would explode. It almost, the only way that I could communicate is spontaneously or without script.
Yeah.
And I think that's how people talk to each other.
It's genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so well, that oh, I got things going on my computer here. Boy, it never ends. I recall us doing a Zoom. You did a Zoom presentation. Well, not just Zoom, but about all of the online platforms available to businesses in April or May. Well, it was about a year ago to the industry networking group out on the peninsula called the Sydney Breakfast Club. Who would have thought that we're still doing this?
Yeah, totally.
Hey, nice picture, Gavin. Hey, my name's John Jurisic. How are you?
Hey, good. It's good to meet you. You know what is funny? I was literally just looking at the email, and I was thinking, I want to confirm how to pronounce that last name. Jurisic?
Jurisic.
Jurisic.
Yeah, a little bit like Jurassic Park.
Jurisic. Okay.
But not Jurassic. Jurisic.
Is that
Croatian?
I was going to say Serbian or Croatian.
Yeah, Croatian. And I'm born in Vancouver. My parents immigrated here, so I got some very strong opinions about immigration policy, and anyway, it's Croatian, and I speak the language, and I clearly enjoy the attributes of the culture. I like to eat and I like to drink.
Where's your family from in Croatia?
From Zagreb.
Zagreb, okay. Yeah, I've been to Zagreb, Split, Hvar, a couple other places, Dubrovnik. Love Croatia.
Isn't it, prior to COVID, it was ranked number 2 or 3 as the top tourism destination. And and I think it was even getting to where the country, everyone wants growth, everyone wants development, but you also have to couple that with management. And I'm not entirely sure if the country was managing all that.
They just weren't ready for it, right? I mean,
Right.
I think it was the whole like Dubrovnik King's Landing tourism thing that probably took it over the top. But I
Right.
remember I have a couple of good Croatian friends who my view, sorry, this pre actual podcast tourism chat.
Maybe it's part of it. Who knows?
Eh? but I find there's this interesting effect with pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID. There's this interesting effect where, especially in the social media era, you have this thing where I had some friends suggest Croatia, like Croatians who were lobbying me to go to Croatia. I went there in 2008, had an amazing experience, and then I, of course, posted my amazing photos on social media, told all my friends how amazing Croatia was. And I could probably track the knock-on effect of 20 or 30 people going to Croatia in the next 2-3 years. Same thing when I went to Turkey. And everyone's constantly doing this kind of knock-on effect to one another. I think Croatia definitely hit that peak.
It hit a plateau. It hit a glass ceiling. Of course, now they're just hoping to get even remotely back to that. But anyway, this probably has the farthest thing possible away from the theme of our show, which is West Shore business. We are both, John and Kelly. Kelly and I are in the West Shore. Gavin, where are we calling you from? Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm located in East Vancouver.
Oh, okay. Well, we just sort of jumped into this, so we didn't really do any introductions or anything, but that's kind of cool. So welcome to this podcast. I didn't know you, but Kelly might know you. But you have announced that you're going to be running for the Liberal Party leadership of the BC Liberals. In BC. And so Kelly said, hey, let's have Gavin on. We had Ellis Ross on, and I thought that was a great conversation. And now we're going to have Gavin, and who knows who else? Maybe nobody.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I really appreciate you having me.
So I guess congratulations in taking that step, Gavin. It's a big one.
Well, thanks a lot, Kelly. Thanks a lot. And thank you, by the way, for running.
I ran.
Come on.
But, so if people, this isn't going to air on today, but today's April 15th, and we should probably point out, thank you, John, thank you, Gavin, for being fully clothed on our Zoom call today. Because if you know, that wasn't the case in Parliament yesterday.
Yes, the fellow made a mistake. That's
a
mistake you can't make.
I feel bad. Well, I feel bad for everybody involved, but I went on social and read the story and said, kudos to him for coming out and saying, oh, I made a mistake. I'm really embarrassed and shouldn't have done that. But he didn't hide behind a publicist. And I thought that was great. I mean, it's so when you do something wrong in politics, you usually see politicians come out
being managed.
Exactly. Some sort of statement that has very little to do with what happened. But I thought he handled that really well. So, but
I would agree. I mean, I thought that, I don't know the specifics of the circumstance, but, from all evidence, it appears that he made what was probably an earnest mistake. I think, honestly, we've got to rebuild some social capital in politics. I think that there is just this leap to judge and hate in our political system. I think it certainly was inflamed over the last few years by the kind of discourse we were seeing spilling over from south of the border. And we at the end of the day, I know a lot of people that associate themselves with a lot of different political parties, a lot of people who have run for office, served in office. And I think by and large, everybody's doing it for the same fundamental reasons. They want to make life better in their community for people. So we just have to get back to a point where you can sit down over a coffee and you can say, hey, Kelly, John, I've got a different idea, or my party has a different idea. We have a different way of trying to solve this issue, or maybe we have a different perspective that we're bringing to bear around the right way to solve this issue. So, let's talk about it. Let's interrogate one another's ideas. Let's say, hey, look, I see where you're going with that. I give you full marks for intentions. I give you full marks for what you're trying to achieve. And you know what? I think that because of this different perspective or these different stakeholders that, we've spoken to, or this different experience that I've got, well, maybe there's a different way that we can do this, or maybe there's a way to improve on what you're trying to do. I mean,
Okay, I'm going to play the devil's advocate, okay?
yeah.
So clearly, of the three of us, I'm the oldest guy here. You're obviously a young man. You have a young family in your profile as you join us, and I haven't. I think the level of hate and racism and prejudice and political strategy down south has gone into a historically autocratic, dangerous place. I think that's an anomaly. I don't think that's going to be the way it's going to be, and or conversely, they might fight. But I think as Canadians, we're not there, and we won't get there. Nonetheless, I do think, especially in BC, we've historically battled each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Horgan's a fighter.
Yep.
People are wondering why we're having, West Shore Business podcasts are having Liberal Party leadership candidates. Well, John Horgan's the MLA, so it has a relevance. What you say is going to have a relevance to this region. And I remember Christy Clark, a fighter. I mean, she fought herself right into premiership. Oh my God, Bill Vanderson. Are you kidding? So, Gavin, I hear you. I know we have to get there, but it's not generally been the way, that we've conducted politics in British Columbia.
But it has been the last. I think this is a product of having the same people in opposition for so long. It's the opposition's job to ask questions, start an argument, try to pick apart what the government is saying. And I think what we're seeing right now today, even in our press briefings that happen far less than they should, we see an opposition government running our government because they're so entrenched in being the opposition. They don't come out with a new idea. They come out with an argument.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, and that's a really, really interesting point. And you know what? Let's jump into that because I think that's actually fascinating. I think, Kelly, you're bang on in that regard. At the end of the day, it kind of almost comes down to the way that you see the world, right? And I don't say that to denigrate anybody's worldview, but my belief is that generally speaking, at a broad level, there is more of a tendency for the NDP to see the world through a lens of social conflict and exploitation, where every relationship is a relationship of exploitation. Every relationship is colored by who is taking advantage of who. And if you think sociologically, that you kind of have that worldview, or you have a worldview that is a more functional worldview, which is about, maybe it's a little bit more aspirational, it's a little more hopeful, it's a little more focused on how can we, work together, because we're not assuming that every relationship is a relationship of conflict. So when you have a government that comes into power that is really steeped in an opposition mentality, I think that can be problematic because, at some point, 3-4 years in, you have to stop governing as if you're in opposition, or focusing your effort on who to blame and vilify. And you have to start actually offering solutions. Jeff Meggs, who is chief of staff to the premier, was a very successful city councilor and political strategist in the city of Vancouver, where I live. And I'll be frank, part of the success of the party that he helped to drive, Vision Vancouver, was that they were successful in spending the better part of a decade vilifying their predecessors. Mm-hmm. And if something was wrong or something wasn't working, well, it was the fault of the previous government. And at some point, I think voters in Vancouver said, guys, you're the previous government. Like, you've been here for 8-10 years. You pledged to eradicate street homelessness. You didn't get it done. You pledged to address the opioid crisis. You didn't get it done. You pledged to address affordability. You didn't get it done. You cannot blame a party that was in power 10 years ago for the failure of your own good intentions at the hands of poor execution. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the sort of, constructive opposition that the next leader of the BC Liberals and the team has to be able to put forward, which is, look, how long are we going to spend talking about the past when the reality is we've just gone through where we're still going through a pandemic that has been absolutely transformative in terms of the global economy, in terms of local economies, in terms of, the storefront, the apocalypse that has hit restaurant and retail, in terms of the transforming nature of work. We have to get focused on what the future looks like.
And look at the paradigm in which they looked at that through and we saw a good example a couple of weeks ago. Instead of coming out and saying, this past year has been difficult and we really need to stand up and thank the young people that kept our grocery stores open, that kept our restaurants open, that made sure we got the things we need. And they're out there putting themselves in danger every day. That message is much different than, hey, young people, be careful, don't blow it for the rest of us.
Exactly. And I think quite honestly, it's clear from the appointment just the other day of a new, advisor on youth to the premier. It's clear that this government is still in damage control because they realize that I fundamentally believe that John Horgan has broken trust with a generational cohort. Now that happens to be the same generational cohort that, that my party, the BC Liberals, haven't done enough to build a bridge to and engage and bring in. So for me, I was blessed with an opportunity where, I launched my leadership campaign, within 48 hours of those statements from John Horgan. And I think it's an opportunity for our party, for the BC Liberals, to make clear that, John Horgan evidently takes young people seriously when it's election time, is keen to curry favor with them, and is keen to vilify other people in order to get their support and get their votes. But we need to be a party that demonstrably takes young people seriously every day of the week. And that's where I think I can make a difference through my participation in this leadership contest or through my success. But it's about being able to put forward the idea that, in fact, we are a party for that next generation. Because let's be real honest, we have some challenges as a party. We have some work to do. We fundamentally need to invite the next generation into our party. We need to rebuild our base. And I think that correlates directly with this overall broader dimension happening in British Columbia, where we need the next generation. We need the 35-year-old tech entrepreneur. We need the 25-year-old, person who's working in whatever job. We need them to feel as if they can make it here. Whether that be as a family or whether that be in terms of investing as a business. We've got to rebuild that dream, restore that hope. And I think that correlates as well with where the BC Liberals need to go.
And that's an interesting point, because when you look at that demographic, I mean, we are environmentally forward, or thinking of becoming more forward. We are the company of small business, and we are the we are the party that would naturally support things like rideshare or things like Airbnb, or the stuff that seems to be shaping this generation. And I mean, just calling it the gig economy, I think, is not doing it justice, because it's really shifting the way that people work. And it's more of a belief system of young people saying, well, I don't want to work full time all the time at one thing and then retire and die. They're looking at, well, if I do, if I'm an Uber driver, I can also go to school and I can also pursue this passion and all those things. So a lot of the things that we stand for as a party are actually the same things that the younger generation stands for, and fundamentally the things that the NDP stand against. Somehow they were able to turn the table during the election and make people think that they were for it while acting against it. And I brought up rideshare for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly, that's such a great example. That's, it's bigger than just its own thing. I mean, what I always point out is that it took 7 years and 2 governments for British Columbia to figure out how to regulate ride hailing. And you could ride share in, Mogadishu before you could in Vancouver. And, to me, that's not just a nakedly pro ride sharing position, because I think what ended up happening is that over that 7-year period of time, there was tremendous uncertainty for the incumbents in that marketplace, taxi drivers, medallion owners, who were basically being told, well, things are probably going to maybe change. Maybe it's going to be okay. Maybe it's not. 7 years. And for, the new company trying to enter, It was maybe, maybe not, maybe, maybe not. Oh, there's an election coming, maybe not. And the broader issue is that the signal that sent to the market was if you want to be innovative, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
When we're trying to build a strong tech sector, which I believe fundamentally we have to strengthen here, uh, and somebody arrives on a plane at YVR or at whatever airport, and anywhere else in the world, they get off the plane and they go on Uber and they go to their destination. And for the longest time, they couldn't. I know for a fact that had a serious damping effect on people investing in and believing in the tech ecosystem here because it was this sense of like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You guys can't figure out how to do this one basic thing. Well, if I want to come in to British Columbia and I want to invest private sector risk capital in expanding our EV infrastructure, or I want to invest private sector capital in an alternative energy project, or what have you, I'm going to be looking twice, whether it be just on that understanding of the 21st century economy and where things are going, or frankly on our ability as a whole to get to yes. Because capital doesn't necessarily distinguish between whether we can get to yes on a resource project or an alternative energy project, on a housing project or on a mine. People add to their calculation of risk based on the overall environment. So we're going to have to get a lot better at getting to yes on housing, on childcare, on resource sector projects, on alternative energy projects. We've got to rebuild that social capital so you don't have a situation where it takes 13 years to approve a mine. But you also can't have a situation where it takes 18 months to get, a building permit done or 6 months to get a childcare licensed, because all of those things introduce uncertainty and drag and cost. And it's the end user that ends up paying for that, whether that is a homeowner, a renter, a parent, you name it. It's all of us that end up paying.
I'm listening to you, and I want to vote for you. I want you to be my leader.
Well, thanks, John.
But let's kind of put this within a broader context of maybe the last 20, 30 years, which I guess I'm the only one really able to thoroughly parroting my generation here. So it would be, I recall a time when running for the leadership of a provincial party, especially one as popular and as strong and as historic as this one, it would almost only have ever been from a strong cabinet minister with maybe 10 or 15 years of political experience. And so far, the two candidates who I think are extraordinary, now that I've just listened to you for half an hour, and Ellis Ross, who I'm very impressed with, you guys are outside of the mainstream. Let's be honest here. Yeah. Gavin, what is it you do? And why do you think, is there a shift going on here that in fact we are breaking the norms and the protocols? I'd love to say that's yes. Because I think we need new ideas and new ways and youthful energy, my God. And so why don't you just kind of tell me about that?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, John. Let me touch on a couple of those things. I mean, the first is I hope that we're looking to, new energy, new ideas, a new way of doing politics. I think we need to be. I think there is every indication. We were given a message loud and clear by the electorate in 2017, and that was go away and renew yourself and come back when you're ready to form government again. And I think, unfortunately, we didn't do enough in that regard. And we were given that message even louder and even clearer in this last election. Yes. Maybe we can attribute, 5 seats, 6 seats to, the opportunistic snap election. We can spend our time bemoaning our fate that John Horgan successfully pulled off, a risky gamble with a pandemic election, but we can't let ourselves off the hook. We as a party did not do the work of renewing ourselves. We as a party did not do the work of building a talent pipeline. Now, look, we've got 28 great MLAs in the legislature. We've got very good people, but we also have one MLA under 45. And
only one?
One, Trevor Halford, who's a great guy, by the way. Fantastic MLA, he's doing good work, but we've got one. Whereas in 2017, the NDP elected 8 MLAs under 40. And in 2020, they elected 8 MLAs under 40, of whom 5 were new. So there's been a fundamental rebuild there. I believe that we as a BC Liberal Party are at an inflection point where we have to really do the work of renewal. You can't fake renewal. You can't fake change. You can't fake new ideas. So, I've entered the race not out of ego or hubris. Frankly, I mean, I know that I'm fighting an uphill battle, and I'm a profound underdog going into this race. But I also have secured the support of a heck of a lot of people, put together a really great team. It's being received very, very positively, and I think the reason for that is frankly that fact that I'm not a career politician. I'm
Right.
not an elected official. I don't come from however many years of being in the legislature thinking like a politician. And I think that's really important. We need new perspective. It's not just about the leader. It's also about the reality that we're going through a creative destruction cycle as a party. We've just been destroyed. We need to make sure creativity follows the destruction. And that means we need to be prepared to identify and put forward dozens of really strong new candidates in the next election who represent a diversity of perspectives, who look like today's BC, whether that be, demographically or geographically, or in terms of the industries and sectors they represent. So, I mean, this is a profound time where either we renew this thing, we take it down to the studs and we rebuild it, or we are going to be in a period of decline and we will look back 20 years from now and this will feel a lot like the Socreds did in 1991. So, that's where I'm coming from on this. I've been involved with and committed with, the BC Liberals for a good long period of time, but I've also been able to watch it, from an outside perspective as somebody working in the private sector, working on entrepreneurial businesses and major projects, bringing people together to get things done, building teams, all of those things. And I feel that I've got enough perspective from inside the party, enough perspective around policy and where the 21st century economy is going, and enough of a new approach to be able to renew this party and get it back on the right track.
Oh, well said.
Thanks, Kelly.
During the election, I found I got a really odd response sometimes because people would come and say, "Oh, well, you guys did this 16 years ago or whatever," and I say, "Well, no, I'm not a career politician. I'm new. I got asked to run. I'm running. I'm a small business owner. I'm a dad. I'm a whatever." And I had a few people that would just go, "Ah, whatever," but I had quite a few people sort of stop and say, "Well, you don't seem like a BC Liberal." And that told me that the perception that people have of our party is a certain way. And the NDP did a very good job. I mean, more than once I said, I don't have a yacht. I'm not sitting on it drinking martinis. I'm getting up every morning. I'm going to work, and it's the real world over here. It's not the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but people bought that and they believe it. And it's not true.
This is just so exciting. I mean, to hear you guys speak is extraordinary. We used to have sort of an equation. There were these 6 or 7 variables, and they each equaled like health, environment, economy, equals right-wing perspective. And we'd sort of battle within these variables and we'd have differences. I think the entire equation is being thrown out.
Yeah.
And to Kelly's point, who's reinventing the new equation? And it's you gentlemen, not me, and not people like me. I want to hear what the new variables are because they come from different places. I want to know what a new revigorated Liberal Party is going to do about the environment. Okay, don't just pretend it's somebody else's problem.
Totally agree. Yeah. To me, that's got to be central. And I'll be frank with you, John. We have to win back credibility on the environmental file. I mean, I'm very proud that when I announced my candidacy, I was endorsed by a former deputy leader of the Green Party. I've worked in the resource sector. I've worked on environmental issues. I believe that we can strike the right balance there. I have said many times before that, what brought me into the BC Liberal Party was the revenue neutral carbon tax in 2009. Because I think at that time, we as a party were able to leverage our fiscal credibility to do something that was really forward looking in terms of environmental policy. Now, moving away from revenue neutrality has definitely cost some of the integrity of that program, and you've seen some back and forth there. But nonetheless, the point being, I believe 2009 was actually the peak of green influence in this province. There are people that think the 2017 election and the negotiation of the CASA between the NDP and the Greens was peak green. It wasn't, because frankly, the Greens negotiated away their political leverage, and then they let the NDP run roughshod over them, and then they were stabbed in the back in this last election. So if you're a middle of the road Green and you actually want to get things done, I think what you should be doing is you should be looking to the BC Liberal Party as the Green Party of yes. And, the BC Green Party can be the Green Party of no if they want to. But I think it's very important that there is, an appropriate balance of economy and environment. And I believe that the tools of business, an understanding of the economy, an understanding of where we're going in terms of innovation can be extraordinarily powerful tools for positive environmental impact, both in terms of what we do here in BC, but also in terms of how we innovate here and how we can scale that leadership internationally, because we're a tiny, tiny hair on a camel's back in terms of the overall, emissions in the world. We can make a step change in terms of our own unique hyperlocal impact, and we're going to feel good about it, and it's going to be us doing our part. But for us to truly have an international impact, we need to be innovating and we need to be scaling that impact internationally.
And we've lost that. I think back to your variables. Governments become a stagnant institution. And this is why we're not electing young people. And I would even go so far as to say I don't think an MLA should ever have more than 3 or 4 terms. Let's keep the government fresh with new ideas, and the only way to do that is to bring in new people all the time. And you see this a lot in board of directors. They'll put a cap on how long you can become a board member because that company wants to be able to innovate, and you can't innovate with old ideas.
Exactly, Kelly. If you look at the private sector, and I think that, there's lessons we can learn there. I think quite honestly, the private sector has embraced diversity and inclusion. And that's something that, we need to see more of in our party. We have strides to take in that regard to catch up. But if you think also about just that freshness, today, the average person stays in a job for 18 months. Right. The days of staying in a job, in a career for 30, 35 years, and you're coming out the end with a pension, unless you're working in the public service, obviously, those days are over for the next generation. People are staying in jobs for 18 months. Part of that is because the nature of the work relationship has changed. There are upsides to that. There are downsides to that. There is a precariousness to that. But there is also kind of a hunger for change that comes with that, where, I can tell you, I've stayed in a job for an average of about 3 years in my career, and that's long by the standards of my generational cohort. So it's almost unthinkable. Obviously, we need to make sure that we benefit from the experience of people who are in government or in opposition who have been there. We need to strike the right balance. We shouldn't just be floating everyone with experience off on an iceberg. That's in no way, shape, or form my belief. But we need to make sure that we're constantly reinvigorating our party and reinvigorating government with new people who have new energy and new ideas. And that's what I'm attempting to do through my leadership run. And certainly I'm in it to win it. But regardless, I'm in it to make sure that we're injecting new ideas, that we're trying to rebuild our coalition and invite the next generation in, and that we're trying to significantly, freshen our way of thinking.
Yeah, I come from, once again, here I am alluding, God, people are going to want to say, get off the screen, John. I remember a time when any kind of union type of relationship or environment exclusively belonged to the NDP, and I'm so tired of that. First of all, unions are extraordinarily positive for young people to find ways in which they can benefit in some tough work environments. I feel that we've, to some degree, disrespected teachers, healthcare workers. We've not properly diversified our workforce within trades. And those are things that I want a liberal right-wing party to talk about. It's not the exclusive domain of one party. And this kind of work protection is required and necessary in this new world. And that's yet again another variable that I want to see within our sort of vision for the future. It's not just one side owns that workplace protections.
That's because the world is changing around us, and it's time for BC to catch up and change with it.
Yeah, and John, you're right in that regard, right? I mean, I'm not hostile to to folks who are in organized labor. I've got a lot of good friends who are, and I know friends that are labor leaders. I think it's actually really important that you have an appropriate and constructive relationship. I mean, I've worked on, to a limited extent, some labor relations files, worked with labor, dealt with those kinds of issues. And I think the reality is, from a private sector perspective, certainly, if you're an employer, it can be very beneficial to you to have, a point of contact you can deal with. Because if you go and you try to negotiate every single employment relationship individually across thousands of people, I mean, it can be very, very difficult and dysfunctional. So there's certainly a role to play there. I think that we are, when you think about the great disruptions that are coming, right? We're going to be dealing with climate change. We're going to be dealing with geopolitical change, and we're going to be dealing with the changing nature of work. And what I mean by that is technology and innovation are creating tremendous opportunities, but there's also profound job dislocation that is coming. That's what Andrew Yang talked about extensively in his presidential run in the States. Ride sharing actually, we ride sharing became a very ethnopolitical issue. It kind of was read wrong in my view in BC, and because we got so caught up in those dimensions across the political spectrum, we didn't realize that it was really a canary in a coal mine for job dislocation led by consumer friendly innovation. So you had this situation where people who were incumbents in an industry were being negatively affected, right? Because innovation was coming in that frankly was positive for the consumer. We're going to be dealing with those kinds of innovations every year in the forthcoming decades. We're dealing with it around, food delivery apps. We're dealing with it around changes in the nature of retail with Amazon and e-commerce becoming such dominant forces. We're going to be dealing with it, for example, I'm going to say 7 or 10 years from now, we're going to see profound disruption to long haul trucking from automation. And you're going to have all of these changes happening where innovation, virtualization, all these other pieces change the nature of work. So we have to decide how we're going to absorb those changes. And in my view, we have to be compassionate around the way we think about that. So let's not wait for there to be a political crisis because jobs are being disrupted. Let's get ahead of the curve and make sure that we understand what's coming down the pipe so that we can help to prepare our systems and prepare our people to navigate those changes in a way that's practical and in a way that's compassionate.
Well, you've identified some of the more sort of obvious employment and corporate and business shifts that are currently underway and will be. Kelly showed phenomenal leadership last year. I was lucky enough to be in his sort of windstream, so to speak, slipstream around food sector, agriculture sector. And we did a numerous amount of podcasts talking with farmers. Now, people don't know this, but there are farmers, old school farmers sitting on plots of land that another individual no one on the planet Earth can buy this land because it's about 10 million bucks. And then you got to go and invest another 2 million in operational equipment to run this farm. Emerging out of COVID is not only buy local, buy healthy, is innovation and technology around how to grow food. And, we had numerous podcasts with farmers now, first of all, acting like a cooperative and growing up. Oh my God, growing up on a small plot of land. And so there's shifts going on in these massive sectors that need political leadership to help them grow.
Yeah. John, you're bang on. You're bang on. And you know what? I'm glad you brought up agricultural technology because frankly, my work, a significant portion of my work is actually leading an agricultural technology innovation cluster. And preparing to build that out in the Fraser Valley.
Okay, for everyone watching us, and there's like a bazillion,
you did
not know that.
So thanks for the softball, John.
Right.
But I think you're absolutely correct in that regard. I actually believe agricultural technology is an opportunity, of an LNG scale magnitude in this province.
Right.
We have some of the most productive agricultural land in Canada, if not in the world. We have tremendous potential, but we need to make sure that we're, number one, we're unlocking innovation, because frankly, the rigidity of some of our ALR rules often prevents people from doing modern farming activities on farmland, because we're still adhering to these rigid standards established 50 years ago,
Yeah.
rather than tweaking the rules to suit the actual goal that we should be trying to achieve, which is food security. So there's land-based components. There's a people-based component where we need to strengthen our post-secondary education and training component to make sure that we've got people who are equipped to be the farmers of the future. Because the reality is, the farmers of the future, heck, the farmers of right now are, sitting at coffee, looking at their iPhone, monitoring the humidity in a barn. They're very tech enabled, and there's a ton of innovation coming into that space. And that is going to be really impactful in terms of our ability to produce and scale, grow our farm gate sales, do all of those things. There's a massive opportunity there, but just like the rest of our innovation sector, we need to make sure that we get some of the policy framework right.
Yep.
We need to make sure we're not erecting artificial barriers to people being able to go and do the innovation they want to do on their own land. And to me, that really speaks to a contrast in approach, where I think that on many issues I give the NDP full marks for intentions, and then where things fall down is execution.
Mm-hmm.
And
been their way.
Yeah, and some of that, again, I don't say that to denigrate anybody. I simply mean that when you don't have a strong understanding of how small businesses or business people make decisions in a market environment, you end up putting together well-intentioned frameworks that fall down on implementation. Right. So I think that demonstrably the BC Liberal Party historically has been better on execution. But frankly, we need to go and win the trust of voters on the basis of compassion. We need to go and demonstrate our intentions are good. Our compassion is there. We're trying to help people and families. We need to qualify in that regard before we're given the opportunity to demonstrate our ability to execute based on our understanding of how people, small businesses and others, make decisions. So that just comes right back to that overall kind of rebuild and reorientation and renewal of what our party needs to be if we want to earn back the opportunity to form government again.
I had somebody once, we did it wasn't a debate, it was like a candidate forum. And I got contacted afterwards from somebody saying, wow, I was really surprised to hear your answers. You sound a lot like a Green. And maybe you're in the wrong party. I had somebody to say that to me, and somebody who was involved in that party say that to me. And I took that as a compliment, and also as a bit of a mandate to say, you know what, we need to bring more of that thought into our party, because it's what British Columbia needs. It's what we project out into the world. Right now, we're not following through, and we need to do that. And I think
I would agree. And if people struggle at times to, people should actually have difficulty deciding how to vote. I mean, I think if we look at sort of the contrast between our political system and what we've seen, the emerging, hyperpolarization in American politics, for example, it shouldn't be obvious from somebody's demographics or employment how they vote. Yeah. Right. If we have a good, solid system, there should be good ideas, coming from across the spectrum. We should be unafraid to acknowledge when an idea is good, even if we didn't come up with it. And it should actually sometimes be hard for people to decide how they're going to vote, because they actually really like the environmental policy or the affordability policy or whatever it may be that's coming out of one or two or three parties. That's okay. That's healthy. That's the kind of civil discourse that we need to, frankly, bring back, rather than having this polarization or just having our goal be to disqualify the other party from consideration.
This is just great.
I was talking to a friend who had an aunt and uncle down in the States, and they were saying that the aunt and uncle were moving because the street that they moved in on had too many Republicans. And they said, they stand on their porch and they go, okay, that one's Republican, that one's Democrat. And they know by house. And just to speak to what you're saying is that shouldn't be a thing. It'd be more about the values and the intention of the people that are running, not this, is it red or is it orange or is it green? Or in their case, is it blue or is it red or whatever?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
It's the filter bubble effect, right? That's what people talk about is, all of a sudden especially with social media, hypothetically, you might be on Facebook where, most of your friends are coming from the same side of the spectrum. Most of the content you're reading is coming from the same side of the spectrum. And that just creates a feedback loop where you become more and more convinced in the rightness of your side and the wrongness of the other. And I really think we have to avoid going down that track. We have to be unafraid to, drink a coffee or drink a beer with one another and to constructively disagree. That should be the hallmark of our system.
We're getting dangerously close to determining whether you watch Fox or CNN.
Yep.
Right. But on that incredibly positive note and positive interview, we try to reflect, I think the way society views these kind of interviews and social media interactions, they like them to be short. So Kelly and I started a podcast we call 27 Minutes with John and Kelly. We were not once under 27 minutes. Yeah. So Gavin, why don't we leave it on that, just great final thought of yours and just decide to talk to you again, because this is just so freaking exciting.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, John. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm happy to come back anytime. If folks want to learn more about my campaign and what I'm doing, they can go to www.gavindu.ca. I'm sure that'll be in the link underneath the podcast. But definitely appreciate anybody who wants to sign up, get in touch. I'm pretty darn accessible, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything. So thanks a lot for having me on, guys. I really appreciate the time today.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, what an exciting time for the Liberal Party. Right on.
Absolutely.
You have a great day and a great rest of the week.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.